Hello. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? 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 So when do you think the, they'll, open up the dorm again?
Friday. Everybody's moving. Well, I don't know what the arrangements are gonna be. I was fortunate enough to be sitting at the table while Mr. Nelson was telling Nate and Ben about the whole thing, but they're thinking about, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what's gonna be happening for the arrangements, but everybody's supposed to be moving back on Friday. Why I say I don't know about the arrangements is because they might do one person a room, just in case somebody, I guess, catches it in town or something and starts to show symptoms or whatever. So they might do one a room, or they might just go back to regular roommates. But yeah, it's supposed to be probably Friday and Saturday, just to give everybody time. So looking forward to that for sure.
Yes. Hello. Lucy.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Small pause.
Yes, I don't know if anyone. Yeah, see if anyone was trying to contact me if there was. All right. Well, we'll see if there's any movement to try and log in. I'll look into that. Tonight, we're going to pick up where we left off in our lesson. But I brought with me, and I posted these on Populi, some of the sample covenants that have been used in the past. And there are some things that I like about each of them, and we can see how we may want to construct ours. Then in this book here, there are some potential things that one could pick or do that would fall under some of these categories, and see what we would want to be thinking about relative to agreeing to that, and we can then finalize things next week. So let's have prayer, and then we'll start. Father, we do thank you that your grace is here and with us and trying to help us in all that we do. I pray that your hand would be in this class and help us as we learn together, but we also pray that you would give us what we need to help us to serve you and to seek you in everything that we do. I pray for your special grace and help us to form a covenant together that we would find helpful in our own spiritual lives, but also that you would help us to serve you in this class period. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Now, we were here at the last time. This was the diagram that is in your book that had been presented. Works of mercy, acts of compassion, justice, devotion, worship, and we're going to try and pick some of each of those to be in our covenant. What we want to have are the concept of mutual accountability, independent of authority figures. All of us will be accountable to each other to fulfill what we plan on doing. And so we'll keep each other accountable. I'll be accountable to you, and you'll be accountable to me and to each other. A group in which members display individual responsibility directed towards one another, and we can encourage one another throughout the course of the week as well. A dependence on one another to hold the group together. And if you were meeting in a regular church setting, we would say that it would be our responsibility to ensure that the group survives and becomes a part of the group. Now, to attend weekly, which is the first part of the commitment of covenant discipleship, full confidentiality, so that we don't talk about things outside of the group setting, and to compassionate encouragement, not vindictive condemnation or whatever. We want to encourage each other in a very compassionate way to keep moving forward in our relationship and how we are working each other in these covenant groups. Covenant writing guidelines. Begin where you are and not where you think you should be. We're going to have, there are several different things that we have had in our covenant groups. Now, I'm going to give these out so that we can be looking at some of the ideas here. Some of them are the same because there's a sense that some of these would be practically the same if we, and they've always been in there. I will practice daily devotions, including reading of scripture and prayer for group members. That's a way that we can have a part of our devotional time. We'll keep a diary journal to plan my daily and weekly prayers. Keeping a journal is never something that I find helpful. And I do it when I'm a part of this, but journaling is one of the spiritual disciplines that we study about here in this course. So during this time, that's a good idea. I will treat my body as a temple of God through proper diet, rest, and exercise. And the people who are quarantined will just have to run back and forth in the hallway or something. That are wanting to get proper exercise. Maybe for the guys, are they all the ones that are quarantined confined to one floor?
Yeah, but it's like specific to like you said, the physical exercise or whatever. I guess at 10 o'clock they're given like a certain amount of time where they can go like walk or run outside or something.
Oh, okay.
Because we've seen them a couple of times like.
And do they have to wear like shirts that say unclean while they're doing this?
No, but yeah.
Wear full hazmat suits?
Right.
When I returned my books to the library right after the quarantine was over, and there was a lady sitting there and who was basically in a hazmat suit, big long gloves and plastic all over her. I was wondering if they were going to put the books that we had like in like a special vault for like 2 weeks to make sure that there was nothing in the book, or fumigate it. We'll have to see. Now, but the girls, I guess, that are in Swagger Hall, they can just run up and down the steps, just make laps, because they have the whole floor, they have the whole thing to themselves.
Right.
We'll worship each Sunday, and even those that are quarantined can worship, but we can go, I don't know what's going to happen this Sunday, but Mr. Nelson had the outside service, and we're going to be providing services here or somewhere, or you go wherever you go. Partake in communion monthly, and I can sort of help with that. We'll need to be careful how we do it, but that's something that we could do. And communion is, and regular worship and prayer, those are disciplines that we want to participate in. And we'll attend one special prayer meeting service weekly, and I would appreciate it if we were able to participate maybe in the there's no Mr. Street still has the Zoom fast prayer meeting on Wednesday, and we might be able to log into that. If not, there may be some other prayer meetings that go on, but we may find that's a little more difficult. Now, for compassion, I will be helpful to others by doing 2 kind and helpful acts per week. If we can think about how to try and be kind to someone else. I personally love this one. Practice listening to other people as a ministry of grace. Practice listening, and I'm reading a book right now about the importance of listening in spiritual discipline and formation. And do you know that we may not get all overwhelmed with listening? I mean, people don't write songs, "I got lost in your ears," that are like romantic songs. But we do value listening as a skill that is essential to good communication. And the gospel, God communicates to people in ways that require us to listen and hear him. He talks to us either audibly or through his word, and he expects us to listen. And listening is important because the term listening, the word listen in Greek is the same root as obey, which I find to be interesting. But people really want to be heard. So I think that one is good to keep. And then I like here on this one here, where on number 2, I will prayerfully plan my day, finding a balance between work and leisure. It's a good idea to try and have a balance of those things. I'm not as interested in the idea of volunteering for a service project because I'm not even sure if such things will even be available. We could, Mr. Street is still going on his pro-life things, but that's not exactly the same idea. Maybe if we could arrange for students to go and volunteer at the homeless shelter in Jackson, the one that's south of Jackson there. And they do a good ministry. I don't know if they're even let you in, during this COVID thing or how that works. Or working at His Hands food pantry. That's on a Tuesday, whether or not someone has class. And then the last thing, this was actually David Bagby's idea when he took this course. We will become more aware of social situations through the attention to the news. And then you would read or pay attention to the newspapers or television or whatever, and come to class with something that stood out to you that you saw in the media. That's a way of just keeping track of the world situation. I prayerfully pledge a practice responsibility and stewardship for my God-given resources, and I will tithe my money and resources and prayerfully seek the Lord's direction for the use of money. And that, some people will say, well, I don't have any money, so income, so I am committed to tithing my income. But we still can be prayerful about how to use the resources we have. And even if we tithe, the other 90% that we keep for ourselves that God gives to us, we should ask his opinion as to how those things are laid out. Now this book here, I have several copies and I can even pass it around, but this book is on reserve in the library. It's on my shelf. And there are other ideas in this book, here in the back, of things that we could do if we are wanting to be have as a list of various possible activities that we could be involved in, or other options that fall under these categories. Now, so we want to have in our covenant things that are easy to do, reasonable to do, stretch us in a variety of directions. Now, Wesley's system of interlocking groups that he created started out with the society, the cognitive mode. We're going to get into this a little more intensely later. But the society was the cognitive mode. That's the area where people were able to be taught about what it meant to be a Methodist. It's similar to going to church. The class meeting was the behavioral mode, And that was for anyone who wanted to flee the wrath to come and be a member of a Methodist society. And you would have been asked questions similar to this kind of thing on a covenant, that you did certain things on a regular basis. And you weren't asked about your attitude, you weren't asked about other issues related to your spiritual life, but you were just asked if you fulfilled your covenant and did it. Then a band meeting was not a musical group. The band meeting was the next level in the hierarchy. If you were a member of, if you came to the society meetings and joined the society, then you had to be in a class meeting. If you were in a class meeting, then you could join a band, and that was for people who testified that they were saved. And then this was the affective mode. Now you were questioned very intently about other areas of your life that would deal with things like your attitudes and other emotional and issues that got to the heart of spirituality. So you might have been a good class member and you were doing everything correctly, but you didn't like it. You didn't want to. You had a bad attitude about it. Things along that line. Well, this would get into issues like that. Then you have the select society. And as it would suggest, this society was by invitation only. You had to be selected by John Wesley. And it is thought that this is where he really taught the issues of entire sanctification with people. And they were sort of the group that he could unburden himself with. And he was personally involved in the select societies every time they met. So this was called the training mode. He would train his new leaders in this area. So if he thought you were good for leadership, he might call you into a select society. One of the interesting things that I found here was that the class meeting was homogeneous. Everything was mixed together. So there would be young and old, good, strong Christians, new people who were just starting on the way, men and women, all mixed together. Whereas the band meetings were divided up into, were segregated by class and sex and age and spiritual readiness, so that you didn't have someone, if you had a band meeting of people who had just gotten saved, you wouldn't be as intense with them as you would people who were on the way spiritually for some time. And therefore, these, and you could also get into some things, probably because if they were all men, all women, that might be more personal, that you wouldn't want to talk about in an open class session like you would if you had both men and women there. Then the penitent bands, rehabilitative mode. Guess what that was for? What does the word penance mean? If you go to the penitentiary, what has happened to you?
It's like jail, right?
It's jail, yeah. So it's a punishment. So the penitent band were for people who were guilty of violating Methodist rules, but wanted to be delivered. So let's say they were continuing to drink alcohol or do something else that they weren't supposed to be doing. But before they were thrown out, this was a place where they tried to rehabilitate the people who were in this group and bring them back to fellowship before they were immediately tossed out. So if you ended up in the penitent band, that meant that you might be struggling in some area, but you want to have victory, you want to overcome. And in most churches, we would be wise to have such a group for people who have trouble living up to the expectations of what it means to be a Christian, but they want to continue in that. Now, covenant discipleship groups. Independent covenant discipleship groups would be those that were not connected at all to a church, and that you might be involved with in the community that you just start among any person in the of any denominational stripe. An integrated covenant discipleship groups are those groups that are a part of a church structure. And they might not even have what we might think of as Sunday school anymore, but they're going to start having discussion, covenant discipleship groups that will take the place of that. And then a continuing covenant group are those that are intended to last forever. When you join them, you keep joining them. Even if you were to move to another town, you would carry with you a letter of introduction, and you would look for another group that you might be able to join when you arrive in your new town. You hope that this is with the Methodist Church, hopeful that your local Methodist church that you join will have one. If not, you are committed to try and just find people who might be interested in starting one and being a part of it there in that church. Now, discussion and participation. Leaders need to gently move discussion through the covenant. When we are going to go through our covenant, whoever is the leader that day, if it's Dallas, who's going to be leading us, and we'll all take turns leading. What you'll do is you'll just we'll sit and say, okay, we're going to go through our first thing, and then he'll ask, Dr. Engelhardt, did you practice daily devotions, including reading of scripture and prayer for the group members this week? And then I will answer the question and explain how I did that. Then we'll move on to the next person in the group, and so on as we go around. If there's only 5 of us, 6 with me, we probably will have no problem getting through all of the covenant clauses, even if we do have 12 each night, because normally when we meet, what we'll be doing is going through something about one of our disciplines, and I might give you like a special thing to try and do that I will ask you about if you did that related to the discipline that we're studying that particular week. But more than that, we'll just be looking to God to help us. So we'll move through the covenant, and what we want to do is avoid getting stuck with someone just going on and on and on about how they did their devotions that week, and we don't get through the entire thing. Some people can, I'm not sure if any of us are going to do this, but some people can just take over a discussion and talk and talk and talk. And we don't want that. We also want to say, if quick yes answers provide opportunities for strengthening, if we all say to ourselves, we ask, I will worship each Sunday. Yes, 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 yes. we're not going to increase that. But you might find that if you're in a group and you're finding that everyone is just saying, yeah, I did that and that was not hard, you've plateaued there. You've got to strengthen that. You're going to have to say, you need to start saying that you will go to church twice a week to make it something that's challenging, because obviously you got that down. If everyone is going to church once a week, then we need to start going to church twice a week. Quick no answers provide opportunities for growth and provide advice to achieve success. If there's something that no one is doing ever, the question is whether or not this is a reasonable aspect of the covenant. But more than that, we need to encourage one another to make a point to really work this out. Now, sometimes there's a certain person that just finds it difficult to live up to something, and we just decide that we're going to participate. We have to do that. And it is good for the facilitator to sometimes try and draw out personal examples by asking follow-up questions. Like, did you do some kind and helpful acts? Yes, I did. Well, could you give us some of the basic details about one of the kind things you did this week? And that's better than just saying, yes, I did. Then we want to know how you did it. And so we want to know how you were kind. And we say, Seth, we were so glad that you were kind. But we want to know how you were kind.
Right.
And who you were kind to.
My roommate.
I'm glad you were kind to your roommate. As Joy was all excited because the people who were in quarantine were getting room service. It's more like Meals on Wheels. If we only had a dumbwaiter, we could just stick the cart in this thing and wheel it upstairs.
All right. Send it up in an elevator.
Send it up in an elevator, yeah. If we built these buildings today, there would be elevators in them, but.
Just do it by drone.
What?
Just do it by drone.
By drone?
Oh. Even more innovative.
I'm not sure if that's a good idea, because they wouldn't be able to open the doors, probably. Who knows? Now, modeling and encouraging good discipleship. Being transparent with difficulties gives opportunities for modeling growth. If all of us if we talk about any difficulties that we have, we'll be able to show and model to other people that if we struggle, it's fine, but we're really working at it. Provide resources to accomplish goals. If I find that there are some things that we're having difficulty with, I might be able to bring some resources along that will help us to know what we want to participate in. Remembering their covenant responsibility is part of the journey, and we want to live out the covenant that we're in. Now, this is how dealing with this. Now, one of the things is lagging attendance to the covenant group. Not showing up for covenant meetings will result in a lower grade. That's how I ensure attendance. But normally that's not the case. But lagging attendance is a sign that the covenant group is not going well. You don't have to necessarily have people tell you that they don't like coming, especially if they're not coming. That's a sign that somehow this is not working real well. Failure to make progress in keeping the covenant, especially if everyone is there, but there's no real attempt in making the covenant. Meetings are too short, a lack of meaningful discussion. So if you come together and you, because one of the things you want to avoid at these meetings is to turn it into a Bible study. You can do that some other time. You can also have prayer, but it's also not exactly a prayer meeting. What you want to do is have times of discussion about how you're living out your Christian life on a daily basis and keeping each other accountable for that. You can have Bible study and prayer meetings some other time. This is something different. You also are not it's not wise to give out snacks and refreshments. And please turn off your phones. Now, one of the things that you will keep in mind, I heard about this group in California that was having a discipleship group, and everyone was on their phones, texting and talking to other people, and no one was actually talking to one another. And in fact, when one person went out into the kitchen to get snacks, they didn't realize that no one was actually talking. They just thought everyone was meditating in prayer. And there were two people that were texting each other that were in the meeting. And they said to each other, "Oh, I better be careful because I'm in a small group. I don't want to get caught texting." And the other person texted back, "Me too." They were right across the room from each other and they didn't know it. We don't want to do that. I don't know if that was an actual story or a Babylon Bee story, because some of those stories are pretty good. They're almost believable at times. Sometimes unhealthy group dynamics can occur, especially if someone talks about things that are personal or somewhat creates issues for the group that people do not want to share or don't like sharing. Be open to participant input as to how to make the group better. When I look at the covenant, I may send out a when I look at the covenant that has the idea of participating in a volunteer service project, that idea, what I would propose, is that would be stricken, that we wouldn't do that. And we would add to it, I will prayerfully plan my day, finding a balance between work and leisure, so that we can have some sort of goal in mind, that when we get up in the morning, we ask God how he would like us to spend our day as part of our devotional time. And then we can be thinking about anything, some of the other acts of justice that we might want to add to that. We're fine with dealing with resources, like one easy way of doing that is recycling. You can think of ways of reducing trash, coming up with ways of recycling, not wasting resources. Those are the kinds of things that we can be involved with. And I might post the proposal, and then we can, does that, and you can let me know how that sounds for something to try and be involved with on a regular basis. I can for this class. And we will make this commitment to each other, trusting God's grace to accomplish that. Okay. Dallas, it's good to see you. When you're, you can, when we make our covenant, you and Kathleen, you can both, Caitlin, you can both participate where you are, and to especially when we do the discipline of solitude and silence, you probably can, you might be able to handle that one real well. I guess you can be really noisy all by yourself, but silence and solitude seem to go together. Mm. You can be real noisy all by yourself,
right.
Or you can be silent with a whole lot of people around, one or the other. Okay, Caitlin, are you there? If you are, turn on your.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you part of the expectation is that you'll keep your camera on so that we can tell that you're still there and haven't run off. All right.
Is it off?
What?
Is my camera off?
Are you not aware of that?
No.
Well, I'm glad to hear your voice, so I'm glad that you're there. We didn't want to lose you one way or the other. We see your name. Your name's there. Anyway, very
Okay,
good.
how about now? Can you see me?
I can see you now.
Okay.
See you now. Very good. Now, when we're thinking about Wesley and how he put this together, his idea of having group meetings, human nature is perfectible by God's grace. He believed that human beings, some would say that John Wesley was the first thoroughly modern Christian, because if you went through this method, which is almost like an assembly line concept. If you went through this method of activity, when you got done with it, you'd produce a real Christian. Now, he didn't really believe in a works righteousness, but he did believe that righteousness required working and doing things. Learning comes by doing the will of God. So you need to do the will of God and accomplish that. Mankind's nature is perfected by participation in groups. He learned this from the Moravians and their pietas colleges, pious colleges. They're groups of meetings. He got this idea from the Moravians when he met with them, not only in the United States, in what is now Georgia, but also he met with Nicholas Zinzendorf personally when he traveled to Germany. Human progress will occur if people will participate in the means of grace. If you participate in the means of grace, you have times of prayer, communion, fasting, other means of grace, you will grow spiritually. And you can't grow spiritually if you avoid them on purpose. The gospel must be presented to the poor. He believed that caring for the poor and for the underprivileged was a necessity. And the function of leadership is to equip others to lead and minister. He also believed that the groups were to be a hierarchy of interlocking groups. Now, of course, there wasn't as much going on in society then, but people were expected to be in multiple groups, different groups, in order to be a true Methodist. So you were to go to your Anglican meeting, you were to go to the society meeting, you were to go to a class meeting and a band meeting. And if you were selected, you might be in the select society too. So you were in a lot of different meetings, but he also believed that each meeting was designed to accomplish its own special thing, which I mentioned before. Some taught things for the mind, some corrected behavior, some dealt with your attitudes, and others were for training purposes of the person for leadership in the Methodist Church. And nowadays, we try and have one group that will do it all. And it may not be as effective as this. We also may not be able to get people to come to a group meeting 4 or 5 times a week. Part of the reason for that is that many times people don't live in walking distance of the church building in a city like London or whatever, where people could just show up on a regular basis. Groups graded by readiness of participants. Total participation and mobilization. You were supposed to be there all the time, and you could then be mobilized to accomplish some feat. And exclusion by ticket for non-compliance. Now, what Wesley would do is he would issue a ticket once every so often, usually once a quarter, once every 3 months, and you had to have a ticket in order to get into a class meeting. If you were not faithful enough, or you were not living up to your expectations, you were in the penitent band, but you really were not. You were not being. You're not being rehabilitated. In the end, you could be denied a ticket. You would not be allowed to participate any longer in the class meetings. You'd be excluded, because if you didn't get a ticket, guess what? You didn't know the secret handshake anymore. Not exactly that, but you didn't have a ticket, so you couldn't get in. And by losing your ticket, you would be out of the Methodist Church. You could still come to the society meetings, but you couldn't come to the class meeting until you agreed again to be committed to them. And there was individualized care. There was a sense that every person would be taken care of as they needed to be. You could sometimes even design a special covenantal expectation that was for you alone. Wesley's leadership principles. Lay leadership. Appointed leaders. He believed that lay people could be involved in spiritual formation. You didn't need to have an ordained clergy. Now, the only person in the Methodist Church that was ordained was Wesley himself. Everyone else was a lay person. Leaders were appointed, not elected. Now, he was not into democracy. So he would appoint leaders who he thought were capable of leading. And he would put them into the select society and then train them for leadership. And that, I think, is a good way of handling this even today. Because you will, if you're a leader in a church and leading in covenant groups, you're going to find that there are some people who will be good at this, who may not ever be chosen by vote of the people to be the leader of a class meeting, who have the skills necessary to help people, facilitate people, be to grow spiritually. What qualified a person to be a leader in the Methodist Church was primarily faithfulness to the organization and faithfulness to the covenant that they had signed. Practice in appealing to action, a combination of local and translocal leadership. So every class meeting would have someone in the local church that was over them. And then there would be someone that would be over many class meetings, who would be sort of like a leader of the leaders. So all the class leaders would get together and they would get to do this. Now, one of the things I found interesting is when Wesley initially had class meetings, classes, he didn't intend for them to get together and meet and go over their covenants. What happened was every person who was a member of the Methodist Society was responsible to pay dues of 1 penny a month. 1 penny a month. Those that were too poor to pay their penny, the class leader agreed to pay the penny for them. Now that was not the problem. But when they went to the homes of the Methodists in order to collect their pennies, I come along, hi, I'm here for my penny, and you give me your penny. And you find that sometimes the Methodists were living in ways that were not conducive for what it means to be a Methodist. They might be drunk, they might be otherwise that they were not living up to the standards of what Methodists want. So what Wesley decided was it would be a good idea for them to inquire as to the state of their soul while they were collecting their pennies. Well, then they decided, well, instead of the class leader going around and collecting the pennies, let's get the group together once every week, once every month, whatever the case may be. And then they bring their penny with. Then they would have a meeting in order to deal with the issues that were inherent in their spiritual formation. So, what we are going to do, I'm going to post the covenant. If there are any, and I'm going to do it in a discussion board. And then if there's any questions that you would like to change or adjust, or some other things that you'd like to add or want to make changes about it, when we come back next time, we will have something that hopefully we can agree to. And then begin to practice. Let me get my my calendar up here, the syllabus that we have. So, so the next time is the 9th. That would be a week from today, and we will finish up our discussion of the introductory material, and then we will begin our class meeting, finalize our covenant. Then over the next week, we will live out the covenant, and I will be sending each of you a covenant checklist for us to keep track of our performance. And so then when we get together on the 15th, not only will we be talking about fasting, but we will also go over our covenant discipleship, go through our covenant discipleship group. Those of you, if you're able to come and be a part of our group by then, that's wonderful. If not, we'll be answering our questions via Zoom. So we'll do that in that way. So any particular thoughts on the covenant as I read through that? Does that sound like something that would be feasible to do? And
I liked your thought on if it's like if we find if sorry
Mhm.
one more time if we come to find out that some of these things are too easy, then adjusting them to make them more difficult.
well, we may find that that's the case. You know, that's something that we may find. I will tell you this. What I have found myself in these covenants with us is that usually is not the problem.
Yeah.
But that would be a happy thought. But when you're involved in a church setting and you're in a group that for a long period of time, you're going to have to adjust it every so often in order to make the group worth attending. So hopefully, like if you're in a church setting, you would be able to make it something that is spiritually vital and worthwhile. Okay. Well, next week, next Tuesday, we'll finish up our material here, and then we will get to looking at and finishing our covenant. I'll see you next Tuesday.
I've gotten 15 calls, spam calls today.